KDKR Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC Commerce, KMWC Bethany. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, Automotive Myths Part 2. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Tony Joe's here with me as he is every Friday afternoon to take your Car Corner questions. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call, and I do have a line open. Tony Joe, how's it going?
Doing fine. Doing well, thank you, sir.
Trying to get these mics set just right here. I'm having a little difficulty. Okay, now I hear you, and I actually sound like I can hear myself, which is good. So you're doing okay?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I am doing good. So how is the heat factor these most recent days? Not too bad?
Well, you know, it's not that hot of a summer, and most people understand that. So could be worse, you know. I'd kind of prefer 72 degrees, but could be worse.
You know, I was looking through this latest article on Tesla, and supposedly they did some test runs in Austin, and it didn't turn out
didn't bode well, did it? I heard about that.
Did you hear about this? And it's just disturbing because I always go back to what you said about how many combinations of light and things that have to happen that create and tell the car to go, 3/4 of the way to the left, or just something like that. I mean, there's thousands of situations that they have to account for in having the computerized system. And I think about what you said is that really they discover when they don't have good combinations when someone gets hurt
or killed.
And it's just, I'm reading this article and it's just so matter of fact. We had 2 deaths, and so we're deciding to get in there and investigate it now.
Really?
And I got to thinking, the thing about Tesla is you really have to make a distinction between 2 things. First of all, don't forget they're primarily in existence because they're an EV. But this driverless transportation, I still don't know if that's ever going to be anything that's going to materialize.
Well, Tesla is in the driverless end of it, but Waymo, is it Waymo? I think I'm pronouncing that right. They've already got driverless stuff being practiced in different cities. And they've had some incidents, but I mean it's already out there, Bob. It's in practice right now. And don't ask me what cities, but I know it's some. I know L.A. had some of them because when the riots were going on, they had burned some of them, and they were Waymos that burning. And I'm like, wow.
Oh man.
I'm pretty sure they're electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Which, when you start an electric vehicle on fire, you got a real problem.
A real problem. In fact, what I understand is that firemen just have to watch it burn because they can't. There's nothing they can do.
I'm starting to go to school on EVs. I'm not really that up on them or anything, but I'm starting to go because there's going to be EVs out there that are going to have to be repaired, and if I'm going to repair them, I'm going to have to be ready. However, I will tell you that the lithium-ion battery, is the big problem, Bob, and it's huge. That takes up most of the bottom of the car, and it creates its own oxygen. So when you have a fire, the one thing you don't want to give it is oxygen and fuel. Well, it's already got the fuel, and and you're giving it's hard to explain. It makes its own oxygen. The chemical reaction of a lithium-ion battery produces oxygen, which is feeding itself in making the fire just go on and on and on, and it burns hot and it burns for a long time. It's very difficult to put out. And there have been instances where the car accident occurs and the fire gets put out, and then the car gets on a tow truck, loaded up, ready to go, and the tow truck driver's driving down the road and the car starts on fire again. So it's very difficult to try to extinguish one of those.
Are you serious?
Yeah. True story. It does happen. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, last week we started talking about automotive myths, and of course we don't ever get too far down these lists, but I want to go over a couple of these today. One myth is that you should change your oil every 3,000 miles. And they say many newer cars can go 5,000 to 10,000 miles between oil changes, depending on the manufacturer's recommendation and the type of oil used. I would imagine that as you go up the scale, as far as number of miles that you wait, that the oil change, the whole process gets a little bit more expensive. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably. You mean the longer you wait, the more expensive the
I guess I was comparing. Are you better off doing it with cheaper oil, going every 3,000 miles versus going? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know that it's really necessary to go with cheaper oil. However, let me just review something. We've talked about this in the past, and this is good information for anybody who's listening. Let me start off by saying that some of the mileage interval counters on an automobile, that is to say, that little telltale that comes on, or the light that comes on, or the warning light, whatever device comes on to tell you it's time for an oil change, try not to use that. Try not to pay attention to that. You can erase that very simply. You can reset it anytime you want. The oil change place should reset that for you as a courtesy, but a lot of them don't. So what you get is an oil change that's already been done, and you're 1,000 miles in, and you don't need an oil change, but the light comes on, and it says time to change the oil. The reason is because it doesn't get erased at the time of the oil change. So let me start off by saying, forget that light. It's not a good practice to use the light on the dashboard. It's better to use a sticker on the windshield with the mileage designation written in ink pen so you can read the next mileage interval that you need to have your oil changed. If you've got 33,000 miles on your odometer and you look up and the sticker says it's got to be changed at 34,000 miles, then you should get your oil changed within the next 1,000 miles. Now, the reason for that is because that there are different climates throughout the globe, as you can imagine, and we are in a global economy now. So the same car that you're driving could have been sold in Europe. It could have been sold in the northern Alaska, where it's very, very cold in the winter. Could have been sold in South America, down by the tropics, where it's very, very warm in the summer. And what they try to do is provide you with a happy medium for both weight of oil and time frame of changing the oil, or mileage interval for changing the oil. Well, the problem with the happy medium theory is I don't buy it one bit. And in this climate that we have in the city of Dallas, in North Texas here, it is best, more beneficial for you to change your oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, 4,000 being the perfect scenario, but for those who can't quite get it done in time, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000. The reason for that is because it's very, very warm in the summer, high traffic, a lot of idling, different conditions make it worse here in Dallas than it would be, say, in San Francisco or San Diego, where it's a moderate temperature and the traffic isn't as heavy, and you got a lot more useful road conditions to drive your car on. Now, that's one thing. So We don't use the light on the dashboard. We try to ignore that. If you don't like it coming on, or if it does come on, you can look in your manual and find out how to erase it. If you can't erase it in the manual, you can go online. It tells you step by step how to do it. It's a very simple process. Number 2, never go. Some of those lights are set at 7,500 miles. You don't want to wait 7,500 miles between oil changes. It's not good for your car. They may tell you it's okay to do that, but when you're the one buying the engine at 90,000 miles because something happened because the oil wasn't changed often enough, or the oil broke down and didn't do its lubricating job because it was working under such extreme conditions, they're not going to care. Nobody's going to care about you having to spend all that money to buy a new engine. So take care of the engine you have. Do not go 7,500 or 10,000 miles between oil changes. The general rule of thumb around here, 3,000 to 5,000, and make sure you use the right oil for the car. If it calls for 520, you use 520. If it says 530, use 530. Anyway, that's really what I wanted to say about the myth of changing your oil every 3,000 miles. It's not a myth. It's the truth. And there's one more thing I'd like to talk about real quick about not changing the oil on time. I don't know how many people know this, but if you change the oil filter when you have an oil change, it's going to start to trap contamination, hydrocarbons, sludge, byproducts of combustion. That's its job. So the combustion occurs, the byproducts get carried through with the oil and into the filter where some of the deposits are caught in the filter and the sediments and bad things are trapped in the filter. Now the filter gets full after a while. And I don't know if a lot of you guys, a lot of people maybe have seen some of the new filters are about that big. Now, what happens inside of an oil filter is once the contamination process has filled up the filter inside, it has a spring-loaded canister on the bottom that will push the filter upwards. Now, because it can't hold any more contaminants, oil flows into the filter can and straight back out the filter can without ever going through any kind of filtration process. So once that happens, are you filtering any more oil? Contamination, sediment, byproducts are not being trapped by the filter. So that is going to occur, and you're not going to filter anything, and you're going to be thinking, well, it's okay because I'm not at 7,500 miles yet, so I don't need an oil change. These are all little details that need to be brought out in the open so that a person like me who does this every day can explain why you don't use the light on the dashboard and why you don't wait 7,000 or 8,000 miles between oil changes. It's too far, and you're going to end up damaging your engine prematurely, and at the time you get a bill to put a new engine in a car today, you're going to wish you'd have just done the oil changes a little bit more often.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. 1-877-913-5357. That is the number to call, and I do have the line open. You know, Tony Joe, of course, there's a lot of confusion about oil and when to change it and what to do. Mm-hmm. A lot of confusion about the check engine light. We talk a lot about that. And the myth is if your check engine light comes on, you need to stop driving immediately. And the truth about that myth is it's yes and no.
Well, it is yes and no, but it's easy to tell when it's severe enough to have to stop driving. Number one, the rule with the check engine light is it's going to light up. Why? Why do we even have it on there? Well, we have it on there for air pollution devices. Now, when I say that, I don't mean a particular device. I mean, the engine is running, and we want only a low content of emissions coming out the tailpipe. It was designed that way from the day it was born. Anything that alters the tailpipe emissions or makes more pollution, you might say, is going to cause that check engine light to come on. Now, there's a lot of reasons that a light can come on. The check engine light can come on for a a number of different reasons. If the check engine light comes on and starts blinking 1 time per second, you're going to feel a slight misfire in the engine. You're going to feel a shaking of some kind, especially if you're sitting at idle at a red light. Okay, now that's the most severe condition to have that car checked out like within a day or two. I mean, today if possible, because that can cause a catalyst to burn out, a catalytic converter or something more expensive because of a misfire. That's why they make the light blink instead of just being on. So that's the most severe condition. Now let's go to, hey, I'm driving down the road and the light just came on. People call me and they say, hey, my check engine light came on. Should I keep driving it? Okay, is the car running okay? Yeah. No symptoms, no drivability problems. Everything runs. Yep, everything's running fine, just that the light is on. All right, let's go back to another scenario. Let's go back to, say, Bob, you got gas last week and you left the gas cap loose, or you left it off, or you left it, or you didn't put it on at all, but somewhere tethered. So let's just say it's not on for whatever reason. So I just want to point this out. If the check engine light comes on because it did a pressure test for the evaporative emission system and it didn't hold pressure because there was no cap on, then it's going to turn the check engine light on. When you say, should I stop driving the car? Well, is it something you need to stop driving the car for? Well, you don't know until you have it checked. But in that situation, if your car is running okay and there's no drivability issues, it could be something like that. I'm trying to paint a visual, okay?
Sure.
I'm trying to point out some simple thing that could cause the light to come on. That doesn't mean you got to, stop your life and get your car fixed. There's many pollution devices that can go bad or not work or get plugged up, or a lot of pollution devices that can get faulty and cause that light to come on, but they're not necessarily going to make your car run bad in any way. Now, the EPA doesn't want me to say that, of course. They want you to bring it in and get it fixed and make sure there's no air pollution, which we all agree we don't want to pollute. But is it necessary to stop your whole life right at that moment and get your car towed in, only to find out that you left the gas cap loose and they turned the light off and erased the code and they tightened the gas cap and that's all it was? Okay, so that's a little extreme. I'm going there on purpose. There are some things that would make you want to get it fixed right away, being a light that's blinking at 1 second intervals, or something that's making the car really run bad. The light came on and my car doesn't want to go good. Okay, that's drivability symptoms. That means you probably ought to take it in tomorrow and have it checked out. But the light being on itself without displaying any drivability symptoms doesn't necessarily mean it's an emergency. That's why that light is amber, not red. And, Bob, we've talked about that, too.
Sure.
The most important, devastating things are always going to be red.
Let's talk a little bit about, and I've actually heard a lot of this around my house because boys are getting their oil changes. One's going back to Arkansas and want to get some of those things taken care of, is getting their own air filters and replacing them themselves. And this myth says you can save money by ignoring the air filter replacement. How many air filters do you actually have to change out?
Well, you certainly have to change air filters if they're dirty. So let me start by saying that today's cars are I've seen today's cars, some of the air filter covers or housings required to move or separate the cover to get to the air filter is more sophisticated than it used to be. There's hoses and devices that you may have to unplug to get it out so you can actually put your hands on the air filter to change it. So it might be worth once in a while. There's no reason you can't change your own air filter. Sometimes you need a couple of different types of screwdrivers, nothing really extravagant, but changing the air filter is very important. If you If you don't change your air filter and it gets plugged up more and more and more, pretty soon the car is going to start to run lean, not getting enough fuel, and it's going to start giving you hesitation problems. It can do all kinds of weird things with the computer, not recognizing that we're not getting enough air, so it's going to reduce the amount of fuel to the injectors, which is going to give you less power, and you're going to really have probably a check engine light coming on, although in this case, like we previously talked about, you're going to have drivability symptoms. So yeah, you have to change the air filter. More than likely, you have to check it more often than you have to change it. Let me give you real quick an example. You're living in an apartment complex, and right down the street from you is ongoing construction where they're putting up a new big building. And there's constantly backhoes and equipment, dump trucks and loaders. They're always creating dust and dirt and really, really working every day to get this building put in. Well, your car, every day when you go to work and you drive through all that stuff, your particular car is going to be more susceptible to getting a dirty air filter than, say, the guy that lives in a, nice area of town where there's no construction going on, because the pollution of the dust and dirt and everything is not in the air like it is where you have to drive every day. So checking the air filter is important. I often advise people to go online and start to look at the difference between a dirty air filter and a clean air filter. I mean, there's a couple of tricks to it. You don't just look at the filter color and say, well, it looks clean to me. That's not how you do it. That doesn't mean it's clean. So you need to educate yourself on how to identify a dirty air filter. Once you do that, you can check your air filter once in a while and not get oversold like every oil change that's ever done, you always need an air filter. That's not necessarily true. It would be beneficial to learn how to check it yourself and change it when it's really needed, not every time somebody tells you to put one in there.
I like this next one. New cars don't need any maintenance. You think about it, you get a brand new car right out the lot. What possibly could need to be maintained in, say, the first 10 to 15,000 miles? Besides the obvious oil change.
Well, that's true to some degree. There really isn't a whole lot that goes wrong in the first 10 to 15,000 miles. There's not a lot that you have to do maintenance-wise. Of course, you've got 2 or 3 oil changes in there already, but you can pretty much forget about most severe things, unless, of course, something is obvious and, causes a drivability problem or makes a big clunking noise. I mean, short of the obvious, really you don't have to worry about things too much, except the oil change, checking all the fluids and so forth, until about 30,000. That's the first real checkover that I would think you'd need.
Right.
About 30,000 miles, and then you rarely need much. But it starts there, at about 30,000 miles.
This next, we're talking about automotive myths. Probably the last one we'll talk about today is you should wait for a problem to get worse before fixing it.
No, you don't wait till it gets worse before fixing it. That's just going to cost you more and more money, because the worse it gets, the more damage you're doing. However, there are situations, and I've done this plenty of times myself, there are certain minor things, noises that occur. They can't be duplicated. A situation with your car, it can't be duplicated. You bring it in over and over, and it just won't do it when it's there at the shop. There are rare occasions where if I know it's not anything, it's just benign, it's not going to hurt anything, I will advise the customer in those, case-by-case basis, certain minor things. I would advise the customer, all right, look, instead of wasting a lot of money on time and diagnosis fees and going after something that we may or may not find, wait till it gets a little bit more frequent. Call me. We'll get it back in here and we'll check it then. In many cases, you can pinpoint the problem at that time, thereby bypassing all that wasted diagnostic time, guesswork, hope this works, hope that, if you can't really put your finger on it, sometimes it is worth waiting until it gets a little worse so you don't spend a whole lot of money that you don't need to spend on. You can actually diagnose the problem, pinpoint it, replace the part or whatever it takes, and be done with it.
This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.